What is up, everybody? In this video, I'm going to be breaking down my current Amon build in Borderlands 4. A lot of you in the live streams lately have been requesting this, so let's jump into it. All right, so let's quickly take a look at the inventory that I'm using here, because this will play into the skills that I have in my skill tree a ton. There is a lot of synergy here, and it's mainly because of the melee damage that I'm doing with the Mantra shotgun that I'm using, which you get from Bloomreaper. So this is one of Bloomreaper's dedicated drops. And then on top of that, I'm using the Slippy ordnance, which deals melee damage. So the ordnance and the guns that I'm using deal melee damage. Again, this ties in with the skills that I'm using, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. So for the gun, it is the Mantra, and then we have the Slippy ordnance. And then for the rep kit, I am using one that has elemental affinity and hard hitter. So on use, I get a buff in elemental damage dealt by 25% for 8 seconds, and then melee damage dealt plus 50 for 8 seconds. And this is an order rep kit, so it has 2 charges. Down from here, we have the Raging Furnace. And the thing that is absolutely critical here is the Raging Inferno skill. So you want a +5 in this. The other ones don't necessarily matter as much. There's different combos, like I have +2 in Dragon's Breath here, but this is absolutely critical. So you can get this from Saul, and he's actually the big Encore this week, the week of February 12th. I'll say that, because if you see this after the week of February 12th update, he may not be the big Encore anymore, but he currently is, so you have a great chance of getting or going and farming these. So definitely take advantage of that. So then from there, we have the Watts for dinner. And so this has the Overshield Eater attribute, which just basically means when you have Overshield plus 25% shock damage, just free shock damage right there. And this will play into some of the skills that I have in the melee damage in just a little bit. We'll get to that when we get to the skills. And then for the enhancement, I am using a Malawan with Mixologist. So guns with Malawan licensed parts deal plus 10% bonus damage from the inactive mode's element. And then you can see shotgun splash damage is buffed by 38%. Gun status effect damage is increased by 25%, and gun magazine size is increased by 50%. That's the inventory that I'm using. Now, as far as the firmware, we have 2 in Real Big Fist, and I've just got those across the rep kit and the ordnance, and that's buffing melee damage by 50%. Then we have 2 in Skillcraft, which I have on my class mod and my shield. So that's giving me a 15% increase in skill damage and a 10% increase in skill critical hit chance. And then last but not least, we have Action Fist, 1 on Action Fist on the enhancement, which is buffing melee damage by another 25%. So a total buff of 75% in melee damage. All right, so now let's have a look at the skills. Now that we understand that I'm dealing a lot of melee damage between the Mantra and the Slippies, and then also keep in mind that the shield I'm using, the Watts for dinner, has plus 25% shock damage as long as there's Overshield. So keep those in mind. We'll get to why those are important here in a minute. So the skills, looking at Onslaughter, this is where I have the vast majority of my points. So first up is 5 into Discombobulate. And then we have 5 in Titanium Knuckles. We have 1 in Gut Punch, 1 in the Best Defense, 2 in Bullet Storm, and 1 in Forged in Steel. This one is absolutely critical to this build, and essentially what it means is whenever you do a Forge skill, like you throw out the Stormcutter, which is the capstone I'm using. So when you throw that out, you are invincible. You cannot be damaged for 6 seconds. And then as you deal melee damage, when we get down here and we have 5 in Fists of Stone, when you deal melee damage, it restores a percentage of your Forge skill cooldown. So you throw out the Stormcutter, deal melee damage with the Slippy and the Mantra, and then it quickly takes down the Forge skill cooldown so that you can then throw the Stormcutter again, and you basically are indefinitely invincible. You can't be damaged essentially the entire time. So that's how those two play together here well. All right, and then looking down here, we have 5 in Catastrophe. Whenever Amon applies shock to an enemy, he gains increased critical hit chance for a duration. And whenever Amon applies burn to an enemy, he gains increased critical hit damage for a duration, and they stack separately. And looking down here, Electrical Fire. So whenever Amon burns an enemy, he also shocks them. Whenever Amon shocks an enemy, he also burns them. So by applying burn, you're also shocking. By applying shock, you're also burning, which means you're also doing both of these at the same time. So these two play together very nicely. And then we have, as I mentioned, Fists of Stone, which dealing melee damage restores Forged skill cooldown. Then over on the left, we have 5 into Berserk. Whenever Amon activates his Forged skill, he becomes Berserk for a duration, gaining slow immunity and bonus cryo damage with gun damage and melee damage. And you can see the bonus cryo damage there for 15 seconds. And then there is only red. Whenever Amon kills an enemy, while Berserk is active, partially restore Berserk's duration and increase bonus cryo damage from Berserk. And then we have My Touch is Death, which essentially means dealing melee damage has a chance to activate kill skills. So anything that says it's like this one, kill skill, anything that says kill skill, you can activate, you have a chance to activate, and it's a 24% chance. Then we have Brimming Vigor. Amon gains increased maximum health capacity and deals increased melee damage the more full his health. And then looking at the other trees here, I only have a little bit here. So in Scourge, I have 5 in Battleborn. Amon gains increased gun damage the more full his health. This effect is doubled while Amon is at maximum health. So 20% when full. And then I have 5 in Executioner. Amon gains increased critical hit damage. This effect is doubled for a duration after dealing melee damage. Again, a lot of synergy between the melee damage and the skills that we're using here. So because the mantra deals melee damage, the Slippies deal melee damage, I'm constantly dealing melee damage, so this is doubled. This is essentially going to always be doubled. That is the skill tree. Now let's have a look at specializations. And I currently only have 66 points that I can put in here, but you can see where they're all at. Heavy and Runner for that melee damage multiplier. I'm also using Groundbreaker, which is absolutely critical for this build. So what you're doing is when you're going into a boss, and you'll see some of this in some of the clips that I'll share as part of this video where I'm bossing with this build. You'll see the Slippies being thrown, basically emptying the clip with the mantra to stack ordnance and gun damage and melee damage. And then when you deal the Stormcutter and then the Rocket Punch, it essentially releases that stored damage. And so this stores up to 20% damage for 5 seconds. So this is massive, massive amounts of damage that is being stored and released on those Stormcutter and the Rocket Punch. Next, now with Caffeine, and so this is just, if I run out of action skill, which does happen, if I run out, I can use those 2 rep kit charges I have in my order rep kit to reduce the cooldown. And so this, for each charge of the rep kit, it reduces it 25%. So if I use both, it's 50%. And then we have I Am a Gun. Action skill damage now benefits from increases to gun damage. And then a Honed Mind. Action skills gain a chance to critically hit enemies and also gain increased action skill critical hit damage. And so you can see the values there. So I've 20 into Daredevil to reduce the action skill cooldown rate and the action skill multiplier. And then Sharpshooter, I've got 10 there, and then 6 so far into Survivor. All right, so now let's quickly talk strategy here and how I put all of this together when I'm bossing. So with this build, the way that I typically approach this is I start with the Slippies. So as soon as I can, I throw all 3 of the Slippies. So this one is a triple charge. So I throw all 3. And that is to start stacking some ordnance or melee damage, because these deal melee damage, as quickly as possible. Then while they are doing their bouncing and dealing melee damage, I pop my rep kit, which is going to buff my elemental damage dealt and my melee damage. So that's that, again, elemental damage buff of 25%, melee damage buff of 50%. So pop that right after throwing the Slippies. Then I empty the clip of the mantra. If we look, because of the enhancement, which is going to give me a magazine size of plus 50%, it's actually 19 rounds. Empty the whole clip, then immediately after that, Stormcutter, and then if I need to, Rocket Punch. And then at that point, it basically doesn't matter what boss it is in the game, except for maybe Bloomreaper or any other boss that has like invincibility phases, they're done. Now, if you're running UVH6 True Mode, you may have to go through this entire flow, maybe 2, possibly 3 times, just because their health is so buffed. All right, so that is everything you need to go ahead and set up this build yourself and start giving it a try. But let's go ahead and put this to the test right now against Saul, who is, as I mentioned before, one of the weekly big Encore. So we'll purchase with the Iridium and give it a run right here and see what happens. Now remember the strategy: Slippies, rep kit, empty the clip, Stormcutter, Storm Punch, and then we repeat as many times as we need to. Get as many hits on him as I can here. And that that should be it. Bam. There it is. Nice and quick. UVH6 and the big Encore. No problem. No problem for this build. Let's see what he gave me. Like maybe a golden god and is that a bod? He dropped a bod. Wow. That's a world drop. Sniper rifle ammo. Wild. Golden god. Alright. So there it is, y'all. Go give it a try. Hope you enjoy it. Have fun wrecking bosses. Till next time. See you, everybody.